Hey there, I'm Ian Douglas. I'm the author of the website techinterview.guide, and I'm here to help people with career advancement and interview preparation. My live stream on Twitch covers topics such as company research, how to build resumes and cover letters, applying for the job, getting through interviews, and what to do during negotiations. I've coached thousands and thousands of people over the years to get jobs at the biggest tech companies in the industry, and I'm here to help you too. The following episode is taken from a longer live stream event and may contain interactions with other people in chat. Check out the end of the episode for more information. Let's get to it. It's okay. Cool. So skills block at the top. I love seeing the skills block. I hate the vertical bar separator though. And I think that you could do a better job sort of grouping these things up as far as like technologies go. So I like to see like all of my languages and frameworks on a line, and then like libraries that you've used on another line. So, you know, on that second line, it would be things like Figaro, Bcrypt, Active Record, Capybara, things like that. You don't list Faraday on here. I'd probably get Faraday on there. Simplecove, Pry. Although for the test-driven ones, you may want to put just a test-driven development subheading on here as well. So I like to group them up by these subheadings. So I would do like languages and frameworks, and you list like Ruby, comma, Rails, comma, HTML, CSS, SQL, JavaScript if you feel comfortable putting any JavaScript on there. But if it's on the resume, it's fair game. Second one, then I would say like libraries, and that's where you would list, well, I don't know, technically Rails is a library, but I would leave that under frameworks at the top. But on the library one, that's where you would list like Active Record, RSpec, Figaro, Bcrypt, and so on. And then under that, you could just say like other, and you could list like Postgres, Git. There was some, I was actually on someone else's channel yesterday, and they were kind of asking people like, is GitHub a skill? Is Git a skill? Like which one? Or, do you put both on a resume? They had a couple of hundred people in their chat, and everyone's like, GitHub's not a skill. GitHub's like a web wrapper around Git, which I agree with. I've told people the same advice. Like GitHub isn't really a skill. But there are tools within GitHub that are skills, like the GitHub workflow, GitHub project, things like that. Those are skills because you're actually using a tool for a specific thing. But just the Git interface of like browsing files and like looking at the history files, that's just a web wrapper for like Git log and things like that. That's not really a skill. Merge, file or like pull requests and merging those in. It's just a web wrapper around things that you could be doing on the command line. Things like GitHub projects and the overall like GitHub workflow and things like that, that's kind of a skill. But GitHub itself, I would probably take off as a skill. And then I would probably have another line where you're talking about things like OAuth. You also don't mention like API development, API consumption. You definitely want to put those on there. But list like OAuth, debugging. Debugging, is that really a skill? I mean, it is a skill, but is it something you need to mention? That, like, to me, that feels like an expectation. Like, you better know how to debug. Like, the same way that I would tell people, like, don't put VS Code on here. Like, you've got Atom on here. Nobody cares what editor you use. I would take Atom off of here. Working with CSV files, that's kind of an expectation. If you're a backend developer and you're loading things into a database, doing ETLs and stuff like that, that's kind of an expectation. Same thing, I think I saw JSON on here. Like, that's not a skill. That's a file format or a data format. It's not a skill. So take those kinds of things out. So yeah, I think you could do a slightly better job grouping these things up. Technical projects. I love that you've got a GitHub repo on here as well as production links. I love that. Definitely keep those on there. I love that you're calling out group projects, solo projects. Good job there. The dates are not all kind of up against that right margin. So if you built this in something like Google Drive or Google Docs, you can actually make a right formatted margin, and you can push all these dates against that right margin. And I would do that for all of these dates because you got all these dates, all at different points, all the way down the page. And you really want to line those all up on that right margin as much as possible. The next thing I would do is wherever that date lands over here on that right margin, if you really want to have this span multiple lines, you want to inject a line break somewhere in here so that all of those dates are kind of isolated, and you don't let any text go underneath that date. You want all of those dates to kind of be like its own sort of column in that sense, like its own sort of visual column on the right side of the page. And so I would line them all up. I would shorten all the months to just 3-letter months. In this case, you've got April, comma, year, February, comma, year. Here you don't. So I would just do 3-letter month, like APR space 2021. You don't have to necessarily put what time span it took you to build the project itself. I think that's something that you could bring up at the interview, but is it really important at this stage for you to tell me that it only took you 2 weeks to build this? It's a school project. We understand that when we're looking at your resume. I don't think it's necessary to tell me how long it took. Having the date on there is also kind of optional when it's a recent project. This project from April 2021. Wait, did you go through both programs at Turing? Or was this supposed to be April 2022? Because little SD Shop, that was also a back end. Sweater Weather is back end. But the dates on these are out of order. So yeah, I'm a little curious on that one. They were all 2022. I would take all the dates off because having them in a different chronological order looks confusing when you're trying to promote, like, this project is the most prominent project that I need you to see on my resume. In that case, I would take these dates off because the fact that these all happened in a different order looks confusing. Whenever you put dates on a resume, you generally want them in reverse chronological order. But if you need to promote one project over another, then take all the dates off. Otherwise, people are going to get confused why some of the dates are in chronological order and some are not. So I would just take all these dates off these projects. Again, this first bullet point should be that user empathy statement of, like, what is this project about? In fact, that user empathy statement, I usually don't make a bullet point. I usually just do a line of, like, italic text on the next line underneath the title. And then I go into the bullet points, where the first bullet point is, tell me something that you learned or some kind of, like, strong impact that you had on this project, and then a bullet point of just the tech stack. Because right now, all you're telling me is that you made a backend API in Rails. But you don't tell me, like, what else this used. Like, what kinds of APIs did you consume to make this happen? Over here, you're like, return directions, restaurants, local weather, and so on, but you don't really mention, like, how many APIs did you consume, things like that. Again, professional experience, backend engineer. You were not an engineer for the school. This belongs under education. The fact that you have it listed in both here looks confusing. I would also not center this on the page. Again, it makes it really hard to kind of read and parse as a human being. The applicant tracking systems are going to be able to parse this stuff. But as a human being reading this, it looks a little confusing because of how you've laid this out on the page. When the name of the company, or in this case, the school, and the location are all kind of crammed in the middle of the page in that middle column like this. So I would probably lay it out more like you have the education here, where it's like the name of the place, comma, location, and then just have all this white space here, and then put the date over on that right edge. And then under that, the next line then would be like the title that you held. Now in this case, you can have professional experience, but because you're promoting yourself as a developer, you're going to want to move this education block above your experience. Because again, Turing is not professional experience. It's education experience. Different thing. Get it off of here. Move the education above here, though, because you want to show me these are the skills I claim to have. This is how I've used those skills, and then this is where I've learned those skills. And so you want that first one to be your education, and then under that, I would list professional experience, or even word it as like non-technical experience or something like that, so people know, like, oh, it's still professional experience. You still had a job. You were still trusted as an employee, but it's not like in the tech industry. But yeah, I would definitely reformat some of these. Also, T-Mobile is going to be like capital M, so like watch out for that kind of stuff. And then yeah, some of this is kind of repetitive in here, like the accreditation or whatever on at Turing. Like, again, you're kind of duplicating that stuff. So I would just axe this completely out of here as professional experience. Now, that's going to leave a bit of room on the resume. And so you've got a choice. You could put a summary at the top, or you can put a fourth project on here. Or you can just explain a little bit more about the projects. I would probably just keep it to 3 projects and explain more about the projects. I think by the time you add that line of the user empathy statement and another bullet point of like the impact that you had or your primary learning goal of the project, like API consumption was our learning goal, or implementing OAuth and factoring in authorization or something like that was a primary goal of this project or something like that, then these things are going to take up a little more vertical space. Would 2 jobs be okay for experience? Yeah, totally. Yep, that would totally be fine. Hey, Blacksmith Pop, good to see you. Thanks for dropping by in chat today. Just looking at anything else that I missed. Hey, Oliver Codes, good to see you in chat as well. Oliver here from Polywork. Cool. Yep, so Oliver is someone from Polywork, where I kind of like put a thing out there saying like, hey, I'm looking for people to be on the stream. And Oliver was one of the folks that dropped by and said I'd be interested. So chatting back and forth with a lot of folks on Polywork about timing and like, do you want to come on a Thursday stream or on a Sunday stream, what that's going to look like and so on. Anyway, those are my initial thoughts about the resume. Overall, like pretty clean layout, aside from getting these dates all up against that right margin. So do that in GitHub or in Google Docs. Just go make a right margin, and then when you hit tab in here, it'll just immediately like push that date all the way up to that right edge. And that way they'll all be locked against that right edge. And then, as I mentioned, like anytime that you've got text like this that's potentially going underneath the date, you want to like do a hard carriage return or a soft carriage return. So shift enter, because if you do it like just enter, it's going to make a new bullet point. But if you do shift enter, it's like a carriage return without a new bullet point. And that way, if you really need that text to be on multiple lines, you can. But that way, the text isn't going underneath those dates, and you end up with a nice visual column in that right side. But yeah, I love that you've got the deployed links on here. Again, as a hiring manager, I've said this on the stream a bunch. As a hiring manager, getting to experience what you've built is way more powerful than just going and looking at the GitHub repo. So good job overall. Cool. Let's go back. Oh, I'll give you a good job. Over here, let's see what random one it pops up.
Love it. Keep doing it. Keep it up. Keep it up, bro. You're the best.
Thanks for checking that out. I hope that you found it helpful. I always appreciate feedback, so please let me know what you think. I appreciate any subscriptions, so please tell your friends and colleagues about it as well. Check out the website techinterview.guide for more information about when I'm live streaming and all of my free content. Drop by a live stream anytime to ask questions or message me privately, whatever makes you most comfortable. See you next time.